I remember seeing them on Raven's thank you lists. Thank Mama's Boys. I'm like, who's Mama's Boys? And I lived in Albuquerque in the 80s, of course, and anything metal was played on the radio back then, like all underground shit. And they would play Mama's Boys, and they came in concert, and they were playing Mama, We're All Crazy Now, but they did a cover of it, which was funny because it was the same exact year that Quiet Riot did a cover of that. Of course, Quiet Riot got popular.
When did you move out of Albuquerque?
We moved there in the end of 83 and didn't stay there too long, like left there about early 85.
Oh, okay, because I was wondering if you were there in the 90s. Like one of my favorite, like kind of unknown, I don't know, I'd call them like a hard rock metal band, kind of in the Dokken vein. There's a band out there called Seventh Sign. That's really good. One of my favorites, but they only put out like 2 albums.
No idea.
Yeah. The singer was like a pure, like Pueblo Indian. But he kind of had this cool sort of like a mix between Don Dokken and Bruce Dickinson voice. Which is really great.
No, I know there's a I can't remember their name. There's an all Native American like doom metal band that was on Southern Lord Records.
Yeah.
They were like really heavy, dark doom metal, and they like explored skinwalkers and all this taboo subject matter that they were like really transgressing their elders' wishes.
I bet, yeah, man.
I cannot remember the name of the band for the life of me. I just know they were on the Southern Lord Records, and they were all American Native.
Yeah, there needs to be more of that.
But at that time, in the 80s, in 84, that's where I lived, and it was such a metal time. And that's what we talked about last week on Metally Challenge with Mark, prog dude, glam loving, LA strip metal, baby metal loving Hanson here.
Shit.
And me, the Butcher.
I'm tired.
Why are you tired?
Tired, boss. Tired of people being mean to each other. Or something like that.
Why do you do a show with me? So we talked about 80s metal last week, all the beginning heavy metal bands and the glam scene starting up and all this obscure underground stuff. So how far underground did you go? Did you get into bands like Heavy Pettin' and Oz and Heavy Load and all that kind of stuff? Not Heavy Pettin'.
No, there's a little bit of Heavy Pettin'. Like,
you were at the petting zoo the other day. You did some Heavy Pettin' with your girlfriend, right?
I was there with my mom and my sister, if that's what you mean. I don't have a girlfriend, man.
You're too dangerous.
That's right, dude. I'm a rebel, Dottie. A loner.
Wow. So I was I don't know, I was looking at some other bands in case we forgot something. I know there was just a whole bunch, but we only really got caught up in Japanese noisecore, and like of course Kiss came back into the equation, and then somehow we got onto baby metal, and again,
as we always do.
But we're talking heavy metal, like the birth of the heavy metal scene, like as we know it, and like the big 80s scene, like especially from 83, 84. Mostly LA bands, but not all LA exclusively, like Queensryche, Fates Warning.
Yeah, and I guess if you're talking about almost like underground 80s like hair metal, Icon from Arizona is one that's pretty respected. Just never quite got any kind of like real success. Them and like they're kind of like Rough Cut. Remember them?
Yeah.
You know, Rough Cut, like they never got huge, but they were always like people, like fans, like know about them. You know.
Well, I remember we talked about this a couple of times. This Rough Cut had. I saw that I mentioned this 2 times in a row now, but there was a show in the 80s on UHF channels, which was I don't know how you'd explain that to today's audience, but it was like a repeat network of
Yeah.
I don't know, just like
Yeah,
a
you had to turn the dial on your TV to like a certain
you had to turn your TV had
view.
knobs, not just channel 2, 4, 13 like your normal network ones. You had to put it to 0, and then the
Yeah,
second knob would go to all these other numbers like 54 and 79, and it was
yeah.
mostly channels that showed repeats and stuff of like the Brady Bunch and stuff like that. And so anyway, they had the show. I still did not Google this, but it was Don Kirshner's Rock Show or something. It was come on late at night on Saturday when I lived in Albuquerque,
Huh.
and that's where I first saw Rough Cut. And they played this big long. They played a show with all these other bands, and there was like Rat. I can't remember a few other LA bands. So it must have been taking place in California. Then one night I watched it. It was Ozzy, Bark at the Moon, and then he was with Black Sabbath, who were doing Born Again. It was Ian Gillan on vocals. But anyway, I saw Rough Cut on there.
Hmm.
And like, these guys are pretty cool. How come they never broke it big? And then it's funny because in the 90s, Rough Cut's guitarist is a guy named Amir Derak, who became the
Orgy.
guitarist for the band Orgy, who only really got popular for the song Blue Monday, which is a New Order song.
I know.
This kick-ass 90s band who didn't have any great original songs. They didn't really get anywhere. But
Yeah, I actually listened to an interview with him not too long ago on there's a podcast called Waste Some Time with Jason Green, and this guy interviews like all the 80s cats and stuff, what they're doing now. It was a pretty interesting interview, but honestly I can't remember much about it though. But he's still, he's still producing, making music. So the Durock, and I don't know, there might have been like an Orgy reunion fairly recently,
I think there
but
was. I don't think there was an album or anything, or I don't know if there was. It kind of just quietly disappeared. But they weren't that popular. I mean, they got really huge because of that song, but it wasn't their own song. And when they had a second record come out, it didn't have any covers on it. It was all original material, and it didn't really go very far. It just kind of disappeared after that, as did most of those bands in the 90s anyway.
yeah, good riddance. I don't know, I was not a fan of that sound, to be honest with you.
You know, I was at a strip bar when I heard Orgy, and they were showing videos on their TV. I'm like, who would be watching TV at a strip bar? Except for me, apparently, because I looked up and saw Orgy, and I was like more interested. I'm like, man, that's heavy. That's cool. What is this? And there's naked. This is an all nude strip bar too, which is not a thing anymore here in Utah. You have to pay a good amount of money to get in, and then Orgy's on TV. I'm like, these guys look like the Human League, but they're heavy as shit. Listen to that guitar; it's all crunchy, and
Yeah.
I didn't know what that song was because I didn't know New Wave very much. But then I realized it was New Order, Blue Monday.
Yeah, what
So
if they made a lot of money off that, or if all the royalties had to go to like New Order?
well, yeah, of course. And I bought their album, Orgy's album, and I was like, kind of like, it didn't, it wasn't really that great. There wasn't much going on there. And the only song that had any oomph was that song, Blue Monday, which is kind of bad when your best song on your album is the one that you didn't write, you know? There were some other songs that were okay, but overall, yeah, it was largely forgettable stuff. Um,
Mhm.
but
Well,
I would
I
think,
think he even said that in the interview that their original stuff just was not really up to par. Like it was almost dialed in, I guess. So,
I don't know. I thought they were a little better than some of the other 90s bands of that time, but
I was gonna say, look at the competition.
yeah, it was a great time for music and it was a terrible time for music. So it's really, it was interesting.
Yeah.
But I thought that in the 80s too, because I hated New Wave, but only because it was New Wave and I was a metal guy. But I don't know, interesting that Amir resurfaced there, but Rough Cut, yeah, they never really. And you said Jakey Lee used to be in that band too?
Yeah, he was the original guitar player for Rough Cut. And I think even Warren DeMartini was in Rough Cut for a little while. And
Well, a lot of
possibly,
those guys were in the same bands. It was kind of like
yeah.
that in New York, like Anthrax, Nuclear Assault, Overkill. They were all.
Hmm.
Then your New Jersey death metal scene, your New York, New Jersey. Everybody was in Incantation and Mortician and all those bands, or Profanatica, all those bands come from. I think it was Incantation was like the main band, possibly.
Yeah, it was a small scene, and it kind of makes sense because, especially back then, just trying to find musicians that are on the same page to play extreme music. It's probably just like 8 guys forming 7 different bands. The Florida scene was like that too, right? You have Owens going from Cannibal Corpse to Deicide, Atheist and Cynic sharing members. Got Monstrosity. Everybody played in Monstrosity. Same with Malevolent Creation. Rob Barrett was in that from Cannibal Corpse. You'll get it. It'll click.
Oh, I've heard all that
See,
stuff. I used
see,
to own all those records. I used to do
CJR.
show.
Death metal is an acquired taste, but once you get it, man, it's like nothing else.
Well, why are you telling me? I was into it before.
I'm just kidding, man.
There is good death metal, then there's diet death metal, and that's American stuff is diet because it's all stripped down, trimmed up of the fat, and it's like that food in the green box at the grocery store that's always in the shopping cart for half price. It's like, oh, this is the stuff, the diet stuff nobody wants.
What? No, man. It's in the health food section.
Same thing.
It's in the organic, unprocessed, clean food, raw food.
Death metal should be like a nice big fat steak cooked on the grill, some butter, garlic butter dumped on it, mushrooms, onions, baked potato with everything, even though you don't need it, a beer, then dessert, even though you're full. That's European metal.
Give it to me raw and wriggling.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I listened to so back to back today. I listened to Ace Frehley's solo album, and then followed by Paul Stanley's. I wish. So what I think would be, I wish that Ace Frehley's album was as catchy as Paul's, and I wish Paul's album was as heavy as Ace's.
What do you mean catchy? Aces is the best one.
And man, I'm kind of leaning toward Paul. I lean towards Ace because Ace has more rockers on it, but Paul Stanley has more hooks.
I don't think so at all. I think Aces has a lot more hooks. How can you not like Snowblind and Ozone and Rip It Out? Those are all good songs. New York Groove.
New York Groove was good. It reminds me of a Don Henley type song.
Well, that's actually a Russ Meyer song, I think. Is that who it is?
I don't know. I didn't look at the.
That one's a cover. I mean, Ace made that huge. Like the guy who did it before him, like it was like who? But Ace did it and it was massive. And I know why you like Paul's album because Paul has more traditional power ballads and like the riffs and that kind of stuff. Like not
the hooks, like the pop kind of like it's poppier. Like it's more. Yeah, it's like more power pop, more Beatle-y type kind of leanings, I guess. But I'm sure he used outside riders. I mean, Kiss always used outside riders.
Well, on those solo albums, they totally did that. Like they each branched off with their own group of people and did like whatever. So Gene, of course, had to be the diva and had like Cher and like all these people from Hollywood. And he tried to get Paul McCartney, but Paul McCartney turned him down. Paul had some traditional rock people. I can't remember. There were a few people of note who I can't remember at the moment. But Ace had Anton Fig from the Late Night with David Letterman band, who was his drummer, who also drummed on Unmasked and Dynasty, the Kiss albums. I can't remember. Ace didn't. He just had some other guys in the band. He mostly, and actually Will Lee, the guy who played bass on David Letterman's band, was the bass.
Is that his playing bass? Okay.
Other than that, it was just Ace, and that's my point. I make every show we've done so far is Ace knew what was going on. He wasn't wrapped up in disco and movie soundtracks for like non-existent Hobbit type movies, but he just wanted to play rock, and those guys couldn't see it, and then they still to this day talk shit about Ace's solo album, say it was bad. I'm like, whatever.
What do you think of his stuff after, like, post Kiss? like the Fraley's Comet.
You know, it's funny because I got that stuff. I bought the first one anyway, and I thought, oh, it's on Megaforce too, the label that brought us Raven and Anthrax and Metallica. It's got to be good. And it was like really polished, like kind of almost poppy. And it was 80s. It was mid 80s when it came out, like late 80s actually, like 86. I didn't love it. I have to be honest. I was not too big of a fan. He
Uh-huh.
continues the Fractured Mirror tradition on that and his later solo albums. There's like a Fractured 2, Fractured 3, like the Fractured Mirror instrumental from the Kiss solo album. What did you think of that song?
Well, I think Fractured Mirror is a metaphor for just how fucking ugly he is. I'm just kidding. Keeps breaking mirrors. No, it's all right, but no, I liked it, but it was like, so when you know those little pretty acoustic interludes, they should only be like 30 seconds to a minute long. You don't make it 4 minutes of strummy strum stuff.
Oh, now you're getting critical.
Yeah. Sounded, it's kind of generic, like Immolation.
Oh
Sort
yeah, relation. These are generic.
Oh man, what else? What else was
Yeah.
What else have you listened to this week? Like what?
You know, after we talked last week, I've been listening to Accept quite a bit.
Newer or old stuff?
All the older stuff. Metal Heart, Russian Roulette. That's one I haven't dug out in a while, so I got that out and listened to it.
Uh-huh.
And that's really good. That's a good album. That was the one after Metal Heart, and Metal Heart's definitely my favorite Accept album. It's just a seriously good, like 10 good solid songs of heavy metal.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Yeah.
bona fide 100% dyed in the wool. This is what it should be, heavy metal. It's so good.
Well,
And it's
have you listened to any of like the new stuff since they sort of rebooted with that other singer, what's his name? Mark Tornillo? I think
not
you guys.
really. I've heard a few. I think I've heard the Death Row album. And there's one I think called Victory or For Victory or something. It's like a red cover with the guy doing the peace sign on the front, like a hand. But
Oh, okay, that's okay. That's the one I'm talking about. Blood of Nations.
yeah, Blood of the Nations. That's it. Those are okay. I don't know, for some reason, except without Udo, it's good, but my mind wanders, you know. But with Udo, it's like those vocals just kind of grab you because
Yeah.
he's yelling at you, you know. It's I don't know, but then it's funny because Udo, his solo stuff is the same way. It's like it's good, it's heavy, but for some reason it's just not there. And that to me is kind of the chemistry of certain bands, you know. It's like how can you have Kiss without Gene and Paul? They're saying that Kiss can go on without them. How can you have Accept without Udo, but all the backing band and I don't know.
Yeah.
They're good
I
albums. I've heard them. Maybe I need to listen to them again. They're not bad. I just
I
kind
might
of
have to listen. They just released one last year. Like I didn't even know. It's called Too Mean to Die.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you say that because I heard that on Pandora. It came up on a heavy metal station. I had like a Judas Priest station.
Oh yeah?
Like, this sounds really heavy for Judas Priest, but it's Rob Halford. And I looked at it and it was Accept, but it was clearly Rob Halford guest vocaling. But then the rest of the album, it would come on other songs. It sounded kind of Priest-like, but it was Accept. So it was really heavy Accept style Judas Priest. It was really bizarre. It was weird.
So it was Rob Halford singing on it?
There was Rob Halford singing one song, I think, and I looked it up, and I think he sings one song. It's probably a single, but then the other songs that I heard kind of sounded similar vocally, but it wasn't Rob. So it sounds like they're going for a Judas Priest kind of worship thing, which is nothing wrong with that. But they sounded a little bit too much like him because Accept is Accept, you know, and then they're good German heavy metal, which is funny because one of my favorite death metal bands is Fleshcrawl, who are German. And they started out super heavy and doing their own unique sound. And then as they went on, they took on the Swedish sound with the vocals were more like a little less heavy and like the guitars and stuff were more like like that Gothenburg sound than it was the German thing that their own natural sound. So and it kind of lost me after that.
Yeah.
And it was widely known in the scene. Everybody made fun of them because they were German and they sounded like Swedish death metal. So I don't know. Accept was good. I haven't really listened to all their stuff with the fine tooth comb, their newer stuff, but I've heard Death Row all the way through. It was okay. And then there was another one. Was Udo on Death Row?
Yeah, I think that was Udo. Let me bring it up because that was kind of like
and on that one.
Yeah, so
and that's the thing because Peter Baltus, their bass player, was so heavy, it was so thick in the mix. I don't think he was on that record, and that's why it was like really thin sounding to me, but Udo was on it, but it wasn't as good. I was like, and they did Generation Clash. They recovered Generation Clash, their song from that Glammy album they did, Eat the Heat, where they had the American singer.
Yeah, David Reese.
Song. What's that?
David Reese.
Yeah, and that Generation Clash is a super heavy song. It was a standout on that record, and they remade it with Udo, but it wasn't quite as heavy, so it didn't quite. It was really weird how that worked out.
Yeah, so like the Death Row and like Predator, so like they quit, and that was like 1996, and then they quit, and then 4 years later they came out with Blood of Nations. That's when they sort of rebooted, and they had Andy Sneap. So Andy Sneap has been producing the albums. That's why they sound so heavy now.
And that would be the same guy who's in Judas Priest right now, right?
Right, and he produced the last Judas Priest album, which was really good, like Firepower.
But he was in Judas Priest too for a while, right? And they kicked him out, and there was an uproar, and they brought him back in, right?
No.
Yeah.
The uproar is they kicked KK Downing out.
No. That too. But they had Andy Sneap, and then they kicked him out and just went down to a 4-piece. And there was like kind of an uproar online, like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Okay.
I said, "Oh no, we were just kidding." They brought him back.
Well, no, so it wasn't. Oh, maybe you're right. I thought it was big. I thought it was they were a 4-piece with Andy Sneap because Richard Faulkner was having health issues.
No, I'm pretty sure it was Andy Sneap. And I know this because the name Andy Sneap has always stuck with me because Andy Sneap was also the guitarist in a British thrash metal band called Sabbath.
Sabbath, yeah.
Not to be confused with the Japanese band who have been around forever. But they had some pretty good, like, couple of good records come out on Noise Records, and he was in that band first. And that was his first band. And then it was funny because he turned up later in Judas Priest. I was like, oh, that's the guy from Sabbath. When they played here, when I lived at this house I'm in now, it was right down the street where they played with him. And they came back again, like a few months later. They were here again at the same place. And I was like, well, shit, should I go see him? It was already halfway over when I figured it out. And that was the time they didn't have him. And they had kicked him out or something, and then all of a sudden I read online there was this big uproar that they bring him back because the fans demanded it, and they brought him back. Like,
when you think about it, like Judas Priest, you can't do Judas Priest with one guitar.
Not really.
That is a 2-guitar band.
Well, that's what I mean. And like Accept has a certain sound, and their bass player, if he's not in there, and they don't have the background vocals with the whole band singing the harmony vocals like they do, it's not Accept. Udo's vocals are pretty unique too, though. So I don't know. It's maybe I'm
for sure. Yeah, you are. Just too picky.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man.
So I'm looking at this chart here. I looked up online. I'm looking at this chart, and all these metal albums from 1984. Like I remembered most of them, but I didn't know some of these actually came out in '84. Like Metal Church's first album.
Oh yeah.
Was way later. I guess not. Was that in '84?
I think so. Yeah, they were pretty early on the scene.
That's really weird. And then, what did you think of Y&T?
I like Y&T.
So they were always kind of they were more like a Triumph kind of band. They were trying to be for that real heavy metal sound, but they didn't quite come across that way to me. And their name was Yesterday and Today, which is a Beatles album.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know why they chose to do that, but they did.
Well, they're Beatles fans. No, I like Y&T. I was never like a massive fan. Nothing that like was turn me off about them or anything like that. They were just like a good hard rock band. But yeah, like you said, they're kind of in that Triumph, maybe even a Night Ranger-ish vein. But I love Night Ranger. Get me started, man.
Night Ranger was actually pretty good. They had some heavy stuff. If they're only known for Sister Christian, though, unfortunately.
Yeah, but even Sister Christian, that has one of the sexiest guitar solos ever written.
Now, you said
Amazing.
Aces took too long to fade in. What about that?
Well, dude, you don't know how long like. It was about 2 years before I even gave that song a chance because I thought the beginning part was so fucking wimpy that I never got to even the chorus where they're like motor and which was like semi hard.
Night Ranger to me was kind of like the American version of Loverboy. Like Loverboy from Canada, they were polished 80s kind of poppy new sort of rock, and it had keyboards, which was kind of scary to a metalhead, but it was really not bad. They were really kind of heavy, and some of their songs were actually kind of dark.
Oh yeah,
and Ranger was
dude.
the same way.
Like Don't Tell Me You Love Me is like a crushing tune.
And not only that, but Brad Gillis, their guitarist, of course, was in Ozzy for a while, Ozzy's band.
Oh, I mean, he kind of, in a weird way, like, probably saved Ozzy, for stepping in, like, literally in the worst possible last minute and just pulling it off, you know what I mean? Doing that Speak of the Devil.
Speaking of which, looks like in the news, Ozzy's out of the hospital. He's not dead.
It breaks my heart. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to be like that kind of cliche, like Ozzy, he sold out, man, like, but man, he's, I don't know, dude. Like, after like the first Zakk Wylde album, I was kind of over it. Like,
What do you mean, Osmosis?
no, the first Zakk Wylde was No Rest for the Wicked, which is a pretty good album.
Do you not like
But
Osmosis? Everybody seems to not like that album very much.
is that the one that came right after that?
I don't know. I'm not a big Ozzy fan, but I just know I liked "See You Tomorrow" and "See You on the Other Side." Those two songs were on Osmosis. That album had
Yeah.
a heavy wall of guitar sound, and there was some really dark stuff on it. Like the song "See You Tomorrow" and "See You on the Other Side." Those are both really kind of morbid, dark songs for Ozzy. And
Oh yeah.
that wasn't "Mama,
Well,
I'm Coming Home." That was like good, dark, and weird. The video was kind of creepy, and there were some creepy keyboards in it, like the "oh" kind of thing.
I might have to spin it. It's been years, but no, I don't know, because believe it or not, like I'm a huge Jakey Lee fan, and I'm even one of those freaks that's like prefers Jakey Lee over Randy Rhoads.
I don't get. I get it. Like why everybody thinks Randy Rhoads was so great is because he's
Oh,
dead
for
now.
sure.
But
No, and it was
away from.
really.
I mean, was he really that good? I mean, he's just a guitar. I don't hear anything like.
Randy Rhoads was excellent. Like, I mean, his status as like a legend is warranted, but I just prefer Jakey Lee's approach. Just a little more swaggery, a little more rock
Well,
and roll.
this was all that. How come nobody ever talks about his Quiet Riot years? It's always just Ozzy.
I don't know. I've never heard any of his Quiet Riot stuff. Did they even have put out an album with Randy Rhoads?
I don't think they ever did. I think it's only available as bootlegs. I'm sure at this point in time you can probably find them somewhere, but back in the day, like I heard it on the radio, guess where? In Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was like, what? Randy Rhoads was in Quiet Riot.
But Carlos Cavazo is a great replacement for him. I think.
And that guy gets shit on a lot.
Yeah, and he's not like he doesn't have like an ego or anything. He's very like kind of an understated kind of personality. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, and he did that last album with Rat, which was excellent. That's another band. God damn. Those first few Rat albums, perfect.
Perfect.
Out of the Cellar is a damn near perfect album.
I'd say it's a pretty good album. I mean, now I listen to it, seems like you can tell what songs were like the filler on there and what ones weren't. But
I don't know if there's any fillers on that one. Maybe Scene of the Crime.
Scene of the Crime and I'm Insane, like those are kind of but like She Wants Money, I always thought was a good song. Lack of Communication was my favorite song on that Rat album.
I'll do that one. I wore the shit out of that song. Just that beginning riff. Like when I was young, like I had never heard anything like that heavy.
I remember too, it was funny, it was another one of these nondescript 80s video shows that were all over TV back then. Everybody was trying to capture the MTV craze. It was Albuquerque, New Mexico. My family were all going out to eat. My sister came to Albuquerque from Texas. They were getting married there, and like I remember they were going out to dinner. And it was that night that Rat debuted their Round and Round, the video.
Oh yeah, excellent video. It's cheesy as hell, but like I don't know, dude, in a good way.
I just remember, like my sister came to get me because they were all in the car waiting for me, and she was just laughing because I was sitting there like pounding my fist in the air to Rat, which now is gospel, of course, but back then it was heavy metal.
Oh yeah, it was heavy as shit, dude. And it's still like, you know, when you listen to it, you can kind of hear like the guitar tones on that are still hold up, you know. A lot of, I will have to, you know, as much of a fan of the 80s metal, like, I will have to say, like, some of the sounds, like guitar sounds, don't really hold up. You know what I mean? But there's a few albums where you're just like, dude, if someone played that tone right now, like, as far as, like, albums that don't hold up really for me guitar-wise, like, I'd say, like, Stay Hungry, Twisted Sister, kind of had a weak guitar sound.
Weak?
Yeah, man. And as much as I love this band, you know who I always, for the most part, always kind of thought had weak guitar sounds? This is going to sound crazy, but Judas Priest.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. Like, it's weird because, like, I think of their heaviest album as, like, Painkiller. And there's something about the guitar tone on that album that's just, like, I don't know, man, not very heavy. Like, it's almost like almost like they're using like a fuzzy classic rock tone.
I don't know. Look at their first album, Rock-a-Rolla. They were basically hippies. You know, it's early post-hippie, early 70s soft rock, you know. It was Dying to You, Caviar and Meths. I'm like, what, huh? Who's this?
Yeah. Right.
Even Sad Wings of Destiny, that album, everybody loves that one, but I'm like, it's not my favorite.
To me, like Judas Priest kind of started with Point of Entry. It's sort of where they.
That's the poppiest album there is. There's hardly any guitar on that. What about Stay in Class?
I don't know what songs are on Stay in Class.
What songs are on it? There's no like real hit singles, but Exciter's on there. That's my least favorite on that album, but everybody else loves that one. I think.
What album is Dissident Aggressor on?
That's on Sin After Sin, their third album.
Yeah, okay, so that's probably, I think, where they started hitting their stride. Because Dissident Aggressor is the one that just, okay, this is heavy, you know.
You got to hear Stay in Class then, because there's a lot of good. It's a dark album too. It's a very dark album, subject-wise, as well as just the sound, the overall tone of the album, which is why it's probably my favorite Judas Priest album.
Is that Victim of Changes on it?
Nope, that's on Sad Wings of Destiny.
So they're kind of hit and miss, those early ones, you know. That's probably why I don't know, because my first Judas Priest album was British Steel, so that's kind of.
I hate.
Do you?
I hate that album. Everybody loves that record. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's classic." No, it's fucking not. It's pop.
Well, I'll tell you what, I hate the song "Breaking the Law," just because.
Especially Breaking the Law. Breaking the Law and United, because those are the ones everybody knows, and they're just stupid poppy bullshit songs. There's one song on that album that I do.
Then like Steeler is badass, and Rapid Fire is badass.
My favorite song, actually,
don't have to be old.
And what?
You don't have to be old to be wise. My favorite song in the album.
My favorite song is The Rage.
Really?
And I know that's a throwaway track. It's a weird kind of reggae-esque throwaway.
I was going to say that was like their disco track.
But that's not disco at all. It's like
you know, like I got heavy.
What I like on British Steel. That album that's like their Kiss Love Gun. It's all fluff, short, quick hit singles trying to be like pop. Fuck it. I don't like it.
I,
Love,
I will
love.
say, British Steel is probably poppier than Turbo.
Yeah, it kind of is actually. Turbo is more like their cash in for the glam rock craze. I mean, just the anthemic stuff like rock you all around the world. We don't need your parental guidance and
Yeah, Wild Nights, Hot Crazy Days.
yeah.
That's a great song. I love that song. But I think Judas Priest's heaviest album is Screaming for Vengeance. I think it's even heavier than Painkiller.
There's a few songs on there that are pretty heavy, like Bloodstone and
Devil's Child.
Devil's Child. Yeah.
Then oh, what's the other one? Riding on the Wind. Yeah, that's the other one. And then the title track, like that still makes me break out into a sweat, dude. Just the song Screaming for Vengeance.
I always liked Defenders of the Faith better as an album, better than Screaming for Vengeance.
Really?
When I thought was heavy, like Love Bites was so heavy and dark, and some
I
heads
like
are
Free.
purple and all that. Rock Hard, Ride Free.
Yeah, Defenders was a little darker, I think. I loved Free Will Burning was a great song.
I like the video. It shows the Atari pole position video game, like the car crashing and blowing up. It's like archaic graphics at this point.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, there's another airplane.
No.
Are you in the middle of a landing strip? Is that where you went to get some privacy, or?
Dude, I wish I was in the middle of a nice landing strip right now.
I was listening to the show we did last week. I'm like, God damn, there must have been like 7 helicopters on that entire show. Yeah, I'm looking at some of these albums. One band we didn't cover too much of is Dokken. What did you think of Dokken?
Weird thing with Dokken, okay? Like, I like him, and I like George Lynch, but it's so okay. So what's kind of weird about Dokken is if for some reason if there's like one guitar player that people have compared me to for the way I sound is George Lynch.
Do you dye
But
your
I'm
hair half blonde like he does?
no, I'm just talking about like the sound. And it's just the way I like pick and attack the guitar kind of just has the same sort of squawk sound as George Lynch. But I'm not like I've never been influenced really by like I was never a Dokken fan. I like him, you know what I mean? But like I kind of put Dokken in the same like era, like sort of in the same umbrella as Rat.
They're a little more melodic, but I think they're kind of almost in that vein of like Fate's Warning because they have such melody and they have a somber sound about them, like Fate's Warning. It's between his vocals and the music. It's not really heavy metal per se, although their album Tooth and Nail came out that year in '84 with all these other bands, and that one was pretty heavy. I like that album, especially the first song, Tooth and Nail.
Yeah,
And I'm
that's
not
a really
about
heavy
guitar
song.
solos. Like I'm not all about guitar solos, but the solo on Tooth and Nail is really cool. And I love the intro to the song too, Without Warning.
Uh-huh.
That was
Well,
cool.
George Lynch has like a real interesting feel. Like, so that's one thing I'll give him as a guitar player is like, you know, like to me, like what kind of makes a good guitar player. I mean, you know, yeah, you can shred and everything like that, but there's those guitar players where you hear them play like just 2 or 3 notes. You're like, oh, that's George Lynch. Like you just know, you know, and I think that's a pretty big deal, you know.
What about did you like Dio very much? Because I know everybody who likes
Yes, I
Rainbow,
did.
Dio, and everybody likes Deep Purple and Rainbow, and so Dio is a part of that.
It's never a big Deep Purple or Rainbow fan, but I love Dio. Yeah.
Yeah, I was never much into Deep Purple like everybody, and that ironically, Deep Purple also got back together after umpteen years in 1984 or 85, 84, somewhere in there. They put out that album, and that was actually a kind of a heavy album too. Do you have that one? Perfect Strangers, I think.
I don't, but I've heard good things about that album.
It has the one. It's like knocking at your back door. That song. That song is interesting too because if you've ever listened to Therion, the Swedish death metal band who went neoclassical metal, that song from Deep Purple way back in '84 kind of does that. There's like a symphony like dun 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 dun, and then it's dun dun dun, and then the drums come in, and there's like symphony strings playing. I'm like, that's cool. What is that? It's Deep Purple. But then
Oh,
the song comes on. There's no more symphony stuff. But there's that one, and there's another one too. Like just Perfect Strangers, the title track. That was a pretty good album. Like I'm not a big Purple guy. Like every
well,
time
and,
I smoke on the water, I run and hide. But
oh, I hate that song. And well, and when I say like I'm not really a Deep Purple or Rainbow fan, it's because I haven't really explored their music that much.
well, it's just rock to me. Like Rainbow was just kind of like it was like all those bands like Alcatraz and Rush, Triumph. They were kind of that rock stuff. Because they're lumped
Rush.
in with heavy metal, you expect it to be heavy. If you're looking for metal, then you hear this like 70s rock stuff. You're like, yeah, whatever.
I think for Rush that only applies to their first album, really. That's 70s rock. I mean, they went prog after that. Rush, they're progressive rock. They're not just 70s.
Well, they started out in the 70s, though.
Well, yeah, yeah, but their first album's the only one that's kind of more of like a Zeppelin-y, you know, rock and roll album. After that, they went
See, it's all in
in
the way you
outer
market
space.
things, though. It's all in the way things get marketed by the label. Because when Tom Sawyer came out, it was Tom Sawyer, people would buy that record, and it was just like, okay, well, the rest of this album's not really heavy like that song. It's kind of weird. It's like proggy, like Red Barchetta and YYZ and all those songs.
Well,
You
and
know,
I'm a
it actually
massive.
sounds more like Yes. Well, there is so many other stuff, many other bands coming out. Then, like, did you like Scorpions very much? Because to me, they were the
Oh,
same thing. They were like a rock band.
yeah. So, and that's kind of interesting. And I think you probably suffer this too. You know, there's those bands out there that they have all the elements that you love, right? You know,
Yeah.
the guitar sounds, the riffs, and everything. You know, there's nothing that you wouldn't like about it, but for some reason it just doesn't click, right? You just instantly turn the radio off if their song comes on. That's the Scorpions to me. Like, there's absolutely no reason I shouldn't like the Scorpions. I just don't like them. I don't know why. They're just whatever.
Well, I'm that way about a lot of bands. You give me a hard
I
time.
know, yeah. Well, no, that's what I'm saying. It's like, and I'm not. Once again, I don't really find them. It's not like it's repulsive to me or anything like that. It's just like, Scorpions, man. There's just nothing, and Dokken's a little bit that way, not as much. I'd even put maybe like Aerosmith in that category too. Like, okay, they're good songwriting rock band, and I'm like, I don't care if I ever listen to another Aerosmith song again. There was a couple of cool songs off their Rocks album or Toys in the Attic, but
And then they came back like the Bastard Child that everybody hated in the 90s, 80s, and 90s, and did a bunch of horrible hit singles that everybody hates, except for like the new breed of Aerosmith fans who don't know the
yeah,
old stuff. Some of these other bands, what about like the big ones like Iron Maiden? Are you a big Iron Maiden guy?
yeah, I love Iron Maiden. Once again, like after a certain amount of albums, like, you kind of like lose. I don't even say lose interest, but you just get kind of sidetracked into other places. So right after, like, I'd say after like Fear of the Dark, I'd still listen to the old albums,
I
but
think
I
everybody
just didn't really
lost me
go.
here in
Pardon?
America right about that point.
Yeah, and it's too bad, because they're some of their recent stuff is still good. I mean, they're a band that's just very consistent. You know what you're gonna get with an Iron Maiden album, dude. I even like the X Factor album
Oh God,
with
I knew
Blaze
you were
Bailey.
gonna say. How did I know you would say that?
So yeah, I think that might have been like after that album. That's kind of when I lost track of what they were
That album
doing.
is
Really.
awful.
What?
I
It's really
said
not
that
that
album is awful, and I mean it.
good.
All slow,
Dude,
quiet, acoustic comedy songs with this guy with trying to be like
not really. There's a
horrible.
couple really good ones. Like the standout song, like "Falling Down," was really good.
There are no standout songs on it. Everybody hates that record.
Wow.
in Virtual 9. And it's funny because Judas Priest also had 2 albums with a different singer that not everybody loved either.
Yeah, but the first dude, Jugulator, was really good. I don't know. Have you heard those albums with Ripper?
It's funny, Mike Kimball, again, we were listening to it in his car, and I'm like, what is this? This is really heavy. And he's like, this is Judas Priest. I'm like, this is Priest? Because I remember it being like thrash metal almost. It was really fast and really heavy, and
Yeah.
but the vocals were like, "Wah!" like Ripper, you know, trying to kind of follow Rob's footsteps. But
Yeah. No, it's then they did one more after that, and I can't remember what the album Demolition, which was,
I think that's the one we were listening to too, both of them.
yeah, or maybe Demolition was the first one. No, but they almost went new metal-ish on the second one with Ripper, because I think it was in the 90s, you know, and they were kind of trying to keep up with like Machine Head kind of style, I think.
I don't know. I only heard it that one time. I don't remember much of it. A lot of those bands that came out back then, like Armored Saint,
Armored Saint's great. Yeah.
they were pretty good. They're good, solid heavy metal band. Strangely enough, I mean, they were out of LA too, with all the, or somewhere in California anyway, with all those other.
Yeah. And they took a different route. You know, they went more American power metal and didn't follow the glam thing. You know, when everybody else was like putting on makeup, you know, they were wearing literal armor on stage.
They're probably a little too ugly to wear makeup anyway, more so than the other guys were. But
dude, no, John Bush is cute, and Joey Vera's just adorable.
John Bush is a singer. All singers are bitch boys.
Yeah, but Joey Vera, the bass player, who also plays in Fate's Warning, and who also plays in Merciful Fate right now too. He's touring with King Diamond.
And here's an interesting aside: is John Bush was the singer of Anthrax when they did the Ghost of Mars soundtrack, which he does not appear on because it was all instrumental. Did you listen to that one yet?
I haven't listened to that one yet.
That's a good one.
I'm kind of stoked to hear that with Buckethead and Anthrax. That's a good combo. But
actually, strangely enough, you had some other bands coming out at the same time back then, like Bathory, Celtic Frost first albums, Voivod, Slayer.
Yeah.
First album, Metallica, Ride the Lightning, the real version came out on Megaforce.
Yeah, so you had like, you know, basically the birth of thrash. It's kind of
some of those, like,
right? Because it wasn't Sodom and Creator coming around about the same time too.
Yeah, I think they didn't come out till '85. Some of those ones, I remember correctly, anyway.
It's in the ballpark.
And then, of course, Kiss Animalize.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, and I will have to admit, like, I think my love for Animalize was probably when it came out, like, in where I was at the time, you know, just like being 9 years old, you know, and it was so like, and that music was not allowed in the house, man. So I had to really work hard for my metal because I had to hide it, you know. So I'd buy like, so like for example, Rat Out of the Cellar is probably the album I've had to buy more than any album because my mom would always find it for some reason.
Because it has a girl on it.
Yeah. Cause she's like crawling towards the cellar, and you know, like the band is in the cellar, and she's just gonna go have sex with him. You know.
Is that what she was gonna?
Yeah, she was. They were all gonna have sex, but not at the same time. They're not.
Good thing they didn't, because Robin Crosby, their guitarist, died of AIDS.
Yeah, but I think that was
years
a little later. That's sad though. I hear he was like kind of almost the glue that held that band together. Like he was sort of like the, believe it or not, like the level head in that band, because it's nothing but egos in that band between DeMartini and Piercy and
always the singer. Like,
no, believe it or not, Stephen Piercy is pretty cool. He's like a pretty cool dude. I think it's Warren DeMartini. I think isn't so much of like a egomaniac as he is
Was it
just
Rat mostly his
a
band?
recluse. Yeah, it was Piercy's band. Yeah,
No, it wasn't Warren's band. It was Stephen Piercy, the singer.
yeah, yeah. So Stephen Piercy and the original members were Jakey Lee and Stephen Piercy, and I think Robin Crosby. Yeah, because Warren DeMartini replaced Jakey Lee in Rat. Back then they were called Mickey Rat,
Nice.
and Piercy used to play guitar as well. He's actually a really good guitar
What was the
player.
big deal with Jeff Tate and Queensryche? What happened there? Like, it's another one where all made
Okay, so
about the singer. Then he's like, no, it's my band. So he's Jeff Tate's Queensryche versus Queensryche. And
well, it was so like I can't remember. It was like maybe 10. God, how long? I want to say 10 years ago, but it was probably even longer. But they were in South America, and Jeff Tate started spitting on Scott Rockenfeld on stage, just out of the blue. And then I guess he attacked one of them with a knife after the show. So they like fired Jeff Tate. Yeah, Tate snapped.
why did he do that? Was he high or something? Or
I don't know. He lost his mind, but then so they fire him, of course, and then Jeff Tate goes, I'm Queensryche," and those other guys are going, "No, we're Queensryche." So there was a time when there was literally two Queensryche, and it wasn't even like Jeff Tate Queensryche. It was Queensryche. Like you didn't know which one you were gonna get, but the band basically sued and got the name back. So now Jeff Tate is just Jeff Tate. But Queensryche now has who's the fucking singer now? The guy from he's singing Crimson Glory. I want to say Torin. He's excellent though. Oh, Todd Latour. Yeah, that's his name. And he used to sing in Crimson Glory. Remember them?
heard the name. I never really heard the band.
Well, they were kind of legendary too. Like they were a Florida band, and with Crimson Glory, they actually had like this other singer named Midnight. He was kind of like a mysterious guy that wore a mask on stage. Really good singer, but he passed away.
Was it really Jeff Tate?
It was not Jeff Tate.
How do you know?
I don't know. But I think Jeff Tate, like the last few Queensryche albums with this new singer, excellent, dude. Like classic Queensryche.
So it's funny because at this time in metal, Rush released "Grace Under Pressure," their kind of weird synthy record. It popped.
Yeah, it was kind of the start of their synth era.
But I like that record. I like some of those songs, but not because I was looking for heavy metal. It's just with Rush, they somehow
Kind of have
were
an
able to get away
atmosphere.
with that, and it wasn't bad.
Yeah, that album has a real different kind of like feel to it, and it is a little. I don't even want to say it's dark, but there's a kind of almost an urgency to it, or a seriousness to it that's kind of really sets it apart from any other Rush album, you know. So it's one of my favorites for sure. Love that album.
And that's funny too. It seems like a lot of these bands who were rock bands like tried to capitalize on the metal scene back then when it was happening. Like in Kiss, failed utterly to do that, even though they came out with Creatures of the Night. It was a little bit before all of that,
Uh-huh.
and after that they did Animalize, and that people didn't take them serious because they had been doing disco for a few albums, and they still had the costumes and all that, and they're having inner turmoil. But then you had bands like Whitesnake, who
Oh God.
I'd never heard Whitesnake before, but they've been around in that rainbow camp of bands, like all those bands. They were kind of related, but then they came out with Slide It In.
Mhm.
I remember again on one of those obscure video shows that I saw the video for Slow and Easy. I was like, oh fuck yeah, that's a heavy song.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good back then.
Dude, that 1987 album, just
I hated that one.
you hate that one?
That was where they really started to go poppy, and you saw that video
No, dude,
all
that
the
one.
time. Still in the Night, and then the other one, Love Ain't No Stranger, and what's Here I Go
What?
Again. Like, yeah, that's their big.
Have you heard that album? Like, have you
Yes, I've
listened
heard
to it?
it because one of my friends had it. He would play it constantly over and over.
Yeah, you're out of your mind, dude. That album is heavy as shit.
It is not.
The guitar tone on that album is crushing. It's almost a death metal tone, dude. It is massive. That album is probably one of the best guitar albums like ever. It's easily like one of my top 10 albums. Yeah, 87 Whitesnake, crushing, dude. I don't. Are you
I don't
sure?
think
Are you
so.
sure you're not? You might be talking about Slip of the Tongue or something because, I mean, yeah, it's still the Night's on there, but that's a heavy as hell song. It's like Led Zeppelin with big giant balls. And then Crying in the Rain, that's just slow and crushing. And then that album's heavy as hell, dude. Put it on. I'm telling you,
It was just pop nonsense. That's all it was.
put it on.
Pop
You haven't.
rock,
I know you
TV.
haven't, dude. You haven't listened to it in years.
I don't
You
have that.
just,
I don't know anything by Whitesnake.
yeah, just I don't care, dude. Pull it up on YouTube. Um,
Still of the Night was all over the radio. I hated that song.
okay, well,
Here I Go
fuck,
Again. All the other ones. Love
fuck the
Ain't No
radio.
Stranger.
Okay, okay, put those songs aside, and then pull up, Crying in the Rain, or Children of the Night, Bad Boys, uh, Straight for the Heart.
You have that record right there, don't you?
Dude, no, this is actually off the top of my head, dude. I love that record. I listen to it at least once a month. It's easily one of my favorite albums of all time. And it's heavy, dude. As for guitar players, the guitar tone on that album is like a holy grail. Like, you ask any, like, someone who's obsessed with guitar playing, and you're gonna be like, and if you talk about, like, the greatest tones, everybody's like, dude, how did John Sykes get that tone on the Whitesnake album? Because it is massive. It crushes, like, anything coming out today. And you have like guitar channels that are just like, like videos dedicated, like, I think I figured out John Sykes' tone, okay? He's running a Boss EQ through this Mesa Boogie triple rec with the boost at the front, like, everybody's trying to get that sound, dude, and they can't. Just crazy good. Yeah, no kidding, man. Like, that album is so fucking good. It's like one of those albums, another one of those ones that, like, sort of put the nail in the heavy metal coffin for me. There's another one my sister brought home, and I'm like, Whitesnake. And they just, like, and I'd heard Here I Go Again, like the radio edit, where it had like a different guitar player on it. Wasn't John Sykes, because he fired him. And I just put it on, dude, and Crying in the Rain just knocked my balls off, dude. And if you like Zakk Wylde, you listen to like that Whitesnake album, you can tell where Zakk Wylde got a lot of his licks from, and especially like the squeals. That's a John Sykes. Now you done it.
Wow. So you really like that?
Oh, dude, no joke, man. It's one of the best albums in the world to me.
What would you say your favorite Iron Maiden record is?
Power Slave.
Really? That's my favorite one. Why do you think that?
Again, like there's a certain vibe to that album, and I don't know if I can even really put my finger on it. I don't know if it's like the way that just the guitars cut through, or I think it's the first album with Nico McBrain on it, so it might be a little bit. Oh wait, no, Peace of Mind was. I don't know. I think once again, I was as a kid, and it was just like a really compelling album. The Egyptian theme on it was really intriguing. And it was pretty dark. It had that long ass song, "The Rime of the Ancient Mariner," which
You know what's
you know,
funny? Is, I was at my
I'll,
mom's house having dinner yesterday, and Jeopardy was on. We're watching Jeopardy, me and my mom, and then one of the questions was this Dark Tale by Samuel Taylor Coleridge saw spirits overtaking a boat or something like that. And I said, "Oh, the Rime of the Ancient Mariner," and that
Mhm.
was the answer to the question. And it's just funny to think that like all this stuff I never knew about that I learned from Iron Maiden.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Uh,
got all his kids reading Coolidge.
You know what's really funny is I had this bootleg CD, and like Bruce Dickinson introduces the song to Tame the Land. He gives a little story behind it because it was supposed to be on the end credits of the 1984 movie for Dune.
Oh yeah.
And he goes, "You might know the person who wrote this book. His name is what was that guy's name? I can't remember now.
Oh, the guy who wrote Dune.
James.
Oh,
I
James Patterson. No, just kidding. Um,
think it was James Herbert.
Frank Herbert.
Frank Herbert. That's right." Well, anyway, he says Frank Herbert, and everybody cheers, and he's going, "No, no." Bruce is like, "No, no, no, don't cheer for him. He's a bit of a cunt, actually." It's like, what? And it turns out Bruce gives the story before the song that this guy Frank Herbert didn't want Iron Maiden on his movie because they're a dirty, evil heavy metal band that like spoke the word of the devil. Like he was one of those archaic. And then really, if you think about it, Dune, the book and the movie are like this Messiah-like character who becomes like a Christ-like figure to these desert-dwelling people. So it's kind of like the story of I don't know, like kind of like the Bible, but also of like the Quran too, I guess. I don't know, but
Yeah,
Bruce Dickinson is like, no, no, he's a bit of a cunt. He didn't want us on his movie, so fuck him. And they just played the song. I'm like, okay, kind of funny.
I kind of feel bad. I should probably read Dune, but I hear they're
Don't
very
bother.
difficult. Yeah, like they're difficult books. Like,
It at
um,
the end of the day, it's not really so much a science fiction book as it was just like kind of this religious overtone kind of statement. And if you kind of look at Star Wars, it was sort of like a little bit more zen to it, but then he was really kind of like influenced by Dune because you'll notice them mention spice every now
yeah.
and then. Star Wars, that's a Dune thing, and there's a few other little tidbits here and there, but
So it's almost like sounds almost like a L. Ron Hubbard situation,
you never
trying to get some of that Scientology.
truly religious people like would rather follow than lead, I guess. But so he's probably busy going to church himself.
Maybe, I don't know, but I didn't know they were up for that soundtrack. Who actually did the soundtrack? Well, it was
Toto.
Toto. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Toto did that. Iron Maiden was only going to be like that one song over the end credits. That was it. But James Herbert totally nixed the idea because he didn't like the idea of a heavy metal band being associated with his movie. That was it. And he said that publicly. He's like, they're the devil's music. I don't want them associated with this.
You know what's funny about that is if you think about like, okay, like, just rock bands doing bad things, like Toto probably did more debauchery than Iron Maiden ever did. You know, I mean, I read the
They
Steve
like
Lukather book.
music though on Toto. They actually did a symphonic score, but
It's really
still,
good. I mean,
he probably doesn't know that. He's like, oh,
yeah,
after the dog on Wizard of Oz.
yeah, they don't realize that like fucking Steve Lukather's like snorting big lines of coke while he's doing those recording sessions and getting a blowjob afterwards. So,
Especially in the 80s. And then there was Sting to
yeah,
consider. He was in the movie.
hell yeah.
Not only that, but all the actors in that movie were probably on fucking drugs too. Not to mention the movie was about drugs. Spice. I mean, come on.
Spice, yeah, man.
Fuck that guy. What a hypocrite. Truly religious.
The worm is the spice.
Yeah, that movie was so bad. It was just like it's one of my guilty pleasure movies because it's just so horrible. And everybody's like, "Oh, have you seen the new one?" I'm like, "I don't want to see the new one." They're like, "Why not? It's really good. It's like really good effects." I'm like, "I don't care. Like, I have zero desire to get into the story. I only like that movie because it's so cheesy, like Euro trash cheesy, like the
Dude,
whispered dialogue over like the picture on the screen, so you know that they're thinking this to themselves. You're like, "Oh, what's it doing to me, Spice? It's changing me."
put your hand in the box.
Um,
Dude, I can't think of like the last movie I saw. Not to change subjects, but I can't remember the last movie I just sat through.
The Elder
It
by
was
Kiss. That was a hot movie.
no, there was not a movie. Was there a movie to that?
No, it was.
There should be.
Surprised they haven't done it now.
It might have been Heavy Trip was the last movie I just decided, like watched all the way through. But
There's going to be a sequel to Heavy Trip.
no,
That's what I just
can't.
saw.
No,
I just read online somewhere.
They shouldn't. I don't think that's a good idea. It's like to me. It's like trying to have a sequel to Napoleon Dynamite. Like, oh, you're right. It was on Blabbermouth. Holy shit.
Have you watched Lords of Chaos yet?
No, but I will.
The list of your failures is growing.
Okay, so Heavy Trip 2. This is news, dude. Hold on. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Still with Corpse.
Heavy Trip's not the one where the hell at the end he meets Mayhem, is it? What movie's that?
Oh, Heavy Trip is just about the Finnish metal band trying to play Northern Damnation is the festival in Norway. So they're from Finland trying to get to Norway to play a festival. So it's kind of like it, but to me, like it's like Napoleon Dynamite meets metal, because it's like really it's really sweet, I guess. Like it's a really innocent movie, and that's why I loved it. Is because it like really kind of, to me, it was one of the most accurate depictions, probably similar to like Lords of Chaos, but like an accurate depiction of like your typical metal band, you know, kind of just a bunch of like misfit kids who are kind of like have big hearts, you know. But yeah, I loved it, dude. Like I said, it was just like it's kind of like a feel good movie. You didn't have to think too hard. It wasn't over the top violent or anything like that. It was just like, it's just kind of this wacky little comedy that really was really accurate musically and just like personality wise of what your typical hardcore metalhead is. So that's why I loved it. It's a very authentic kind of movie. You know, like, and that's why I always bring it back to like Napoleon Dynamite was like a really authentic kind of movie. Like, you know, those people that were in that movie, we all know a Napoleon Dynamite kid, right? Just awkward as fuck.
I don't know, not really. Who knows? Fuck Napoleon Dynamite.
Dude. Why you gotta be that way, man?
Because I shit on your convention.
That's why I like Napoleon Dynamite.
Place here. Didn't Napoleon Dynamite take place in Utah? Like, what was the connection with Utah?
The directors are from Utah, the people who created it, but it took place in Idaho. I forgot the name of the town, but the Jared, what's his name? Jared Hess and Teresa Hess, like a kind of a husband-wife team. They're the ones that created Napoleon Dynamite. They did Nacho Libre. They did one called oh man, what's it called? It was like a really weird one, but it was funny. Oh man, what can't I think of it now? That's gonna drive me nuts. So they did.
What was the movie? It was a heavy metal movie about a guy who had a black metal band, and like there was a dude who was a bully that used to pick on him, and they had a band. They both died, went to hell, and they met Mayhem down in hell. Like, they didn't show it, but that was like they played a record back for us, and the guy said, "Oh, we met Mayhem while we were down."
Mayhem.
It's like a B movie. It's like some metal movie. It's like a comedy about a black metal kid who wanted to start a black metal band. This other guy would pick on him, and they both died or something. Something happened, and like he was in hell, and like Mayhem was with him, so he was all excited to be dead in hell. You know what I'm talking about? I think it's called Deathgasm. Actually, now that I think of it.
Oh, I saw Deathgasm, but that was more like I think that was more like a zombie movie or something. But it was years ago when I saw it. That was pretty entertaining, but like hyper gory, like horror, like horror comedy. Gentlemen Broncos, that's the movie. It's a really weird movie, but pretty funny. Uh, anyway,
Do you remember, speaking of 80s metal, did you ever see the movie The Dungeon Master?
oh yeah, dude, Wasp is in that one. They
Wasp.
they played the song Tormentor.
Very very rare glimpse of like 80s Wasp, but the girl in the torture rack. The only difference was is that girl had clothes on because it was the actress, but they usually didn't have a top on.
Yeah,
So Wasp
uh,
was like heavy
I
duty. Like
love I loved that movie. It's the shittiest movie, dude. Like
it's
really
actually
bad
pretty
movie.
good. It's a good B movie. I have the DVD. I found it on DVD. It's got like 3 other movies with it, but
But yeah, I used to watch it over and over just for the Wasp scene.
oh, so did I.
I
It
thought that
used to
was so
be
cool.
it used to be able to rent it at this video store up the street. So like in the
That's funny.
States,
That's where I rented it too.
yeah, I would walk up to Smith's or ride my bike there. And, like there was this video store next door to Smith's, and like even in the snow, I'd go up there and I'd rent it. And like one of
Yeah,
my friends once was like, "Yeah, I went to rent it. Do you have it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do."
yeah, and you take like they just have like the little picture of it on like a laminate. You take it up. Um, yeah, it was Holiday Oil used to rent videos by my house in West Valley because I used to live in West Valley growing up. And
Yes.
yeah, I'd walk up because there's that Holiday Oil by Valley Junior High, and I would yeah walk to that Holiday Oil, rent Dungeon Master, just watch it over and over again. Amazing. That and Big Trouble in Little China.
It was funny too because on the Dungeon Master, I bought the DVD and there's like this extended thing at the beginning. It shows the guy, the main hero, following this naked girl. And it's like, okay, there's a naked girl running around somewhere outside in broad sunlight in California, and she goes into this building, and then all of a sudden they're in hell and she's there, but then he wakes up and then it cuts to the scene in the movie that you're used to where it just starts and he's at work. But yeah, Wasp was in it. That was so cool. I was like, man, that's pretty cool. And it was done though because he kills them with sonic noises. And like with a heavy metal band, he uses sonic noise to kill him.
Right. Well,
Like,
what he did, yeah, I think what he did is he took their frequencies and threw it back at them.
well,
There's like some hard science involved in that. So like he took their sound waves, sent it back to them, but out of phase, and it canceled the band out, so they just disappeared.
that is insane.
Except for Chris Holmes, like he was too drunk, so they just had to like drag him off stage. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because like I guess I don't really have my finger on the pulse anymore, because like in my head like metal is thriving, because it's what I listen to. So whatever,
Yeah, it's just not driving over here. That's the thing.
But do we really want it like in Maine? Like that's always kind of like the
Well, we don't, but as a record
sort of
label,
razor's edge we walk. Like we want metal to be successful enough. We want it to thrive, but we just
I
don't want
want
it.
people to buy my CDs and stuff on my record label, but they don't. And most of the people overseas would rather just go to the store and buy them there, or they'll get them from me, but not very much.
Let's move to Europe.
Hey, you never know, man. It's always in the back of my mind.
We have no really reason to stick around here. Let's open up a record store in Europe. We'll just
I could
hang out in Europe.
on my back stocks on my old record store and from the label. So
We'll just bang hot Norwegians, and then
Norwegian.
or whatever, Scandinavians. We'll just call them that. Because I don't want to leave out the Dutch or Danes and Finns. Yeah,
One of the really interesting places I think looks like Belgium. Have you ever have you been to Europe at all?
No. The only country, I've been to Mexico, I've been to Canada, I've been to Japan.
I have a black metal band on the label from Belgium. I did one album with them anyway. And, I just was looking up Belgium, and it just looked like a really interesting place.
Yeah, it does actually. So yeah, I would include the Eastern. Yeah, dude, we'll just do that. And then when I'm like 75 or something, I'll just like in the middle of winter, I'll climb up onto one of those like Viking mountains in Norway and like die with a sword. And then some black metal band will find me, take a picture, and eat my brain and make a necklace out of my skull. I have this all planned out.
It's not going to
And then-
happen. But
And then my spirit will possess the pieces of skull they made the necklace album, and that black metal band will record Code Weight.
what you're saying is you're a curse to all music.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
And on that note,
yeah.